Smithsonians were giving this very valuable artifact to North Georgia College and State University, what were they going to do with it? Well, several years ago, the university started a new program called Appalachian Studies, headed by Dr. Alice Simpson, our program speaker for tonight. I first heard about the program through an article in the Dahlonega Nugget. The Appalachian Studies program was looking for old-time recipes. They were asking people to bring in cookbooks that might contain some old interesting dishes and methods of cooking. Well, my wife was a cookbook collector, so I took some in, and that's when I first met Dr. Alice Simpson. She was crammed into a very small little office with only a graduate assistant to help her. But she impressed me with her enthusiasm, her imagination, and her drive. She rewarded me for bringing over those recipe books with a great coffee mug and several other souvenirs from her program. Since that time, her program has expanded and grown and is now one of the most visible on the university campus. It's currently housed in the historic Victory House and continues to do remarkable and innovative programming. Well, just suppose you were sitting in your office one day and the phone rings and it said, "Good morning, Alice. How'd you like to have an authentic 1832 gold miner's cabin?" That would have thrown a lot of people, but not Alice Simpson. We've invited her here tonight to share with you all the interesting and exciting things going on in her program at the Georgia Appalachian Studies Center. And among the things she will tell us tonight are the plans for the future of Betty and Jim Smullyan's beloved gold miner's cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Alice Simpson.
Well, good evening. Thank you for having me here. I am thrilled by your introduction. I will pay you later. Thank you very much. That was very kind of you. Most of you are familiar faces to me in here. I would like to point out that tonight Roseanne Kent, who is our program manager, is also here, along with Carol Meeks, our office support staff. And Roseanne is going to talk to you a little bit tonight about what we're doing at the center over the next semester and over the next few years. That includes the cabin and its programming. So the cabin's for our community, for our students, and for our future. We're very excited that we are going to bring it to campus. And I have to tell on us, Jim and Betty, the cabin doesn't belong to the Smullyan's anymore. It belongs to North Georgia College and State University.
It belongs to the state of Georgia.
That's right. It does. It belongs to the state of Georgia. And believe me, they're tap dancing around a lot because of that very fact.
Alice, let me give it to you.
Okay.
Just push that.
All right. Thank you. So where we are comes from my great niece, Maddie, who was being swung around by her pop-pop one day so enthusiastically when he stopped, she stood up and said, "Where me are?" And that's what I wanted to talk to you a little about. Where are we right now? Well, the cabin is still on the Smulyan property as we speak. It's been, as the Grateful Dead said, a long, strange trip. So the variables that impacted the cabin and its move then, funding, we were in a economic downturn when we started talking about moving the cabin, and was it 20 years ago when we started talking about this? Was it 3 years ago? It does. My hair was not white when we started talking about the cabin. It was a long time ago. We were talking about finding funding in an economic downturn, and also when the university was knee-deep in $120 million in construction. So all of a sudden, moving our little cabin just did not seem a priority. Now, I will say, I'm not saying the university flicked us aside as a small bug, but it just didn't look that exciting until we started getting people out there looking at it. Once we got folks from the physical plant and from plant operations out there, they started getting pretty intrigued. As Roseanne says, men like to move stuff and put stuff together. And all of a sudden, they started kind of hovering around this thing going, this is pretty cool. And what really helped, this is a funny picture to show you that I'm going to introduce all these characters with their backs turned to you. to the right is Todd Berman, who is now our plant operations director. He's from California. He is a very enthusiastic, knowledgeable, very bright young man. And he was the voice of reason and sanity, but he didn't say no. And so that's what the combination you need, especially with somebody like me who's listening to people say, well, why don't you pick it up by helicopter and take it to the back? Yeah, let's do that. Let's get a helicopter. Let's pick it up and do that. Can we do that? No, we can't do that. But they had other ideas that worked very well. Millard and Millard are a design team that President Potter, bless his heart, gave $20,000 from his budget to a design team that went in and started looking at whether this could happen, what would happen. When we got it to I didn't know what we were going to do when we got it to the back of the Vickery House. I just knew we wanted to move it and we wanted to get it there. They were the ones that came in and started talking about, well, this is what it's got to look like. And we're talking steel beams underneath it to support. So we're talking about a new chimney. The new chimney will probably cost as much as to put back in as it did to move the cabin. So we got a grant from the ARC, the Appalachian Regional Commission, to support the center so the university could use those savings to move the cabin. And the university is paying to move the cabin. So next time you see Matt McConnell, tell him thank you, if you don't mind to, because the university is the one that has committed to moving it. And timing, I said that was a problem because of the economic downturn, with all this construction going on, and logistics. Deciding on how to move it, and when were big questions. Maybe somebody has a phone, they could look up the weather. When were big questions, and then it took us 2 months. Once we decided, everybody, let's go, the university system of Georgia said, oh no, we have to approve this. And I am glad they did. Because what they did, the Historic Preservation Office of the University System of Georgia looked at the Vickery House and said, how will the cabin impact the look of this beautiful, historic, important structure? And what they came back and said was good news, bad news. Good news is they thought it was the coolest project ever done at the University System. They loved it. The bad news was the stage was a no-go. But we're going back to the drawing board with it. We're going to build the stage. It's just going to be set into the ground so it doesn't overwhelm the look of the Vickery House. And when they made that decision, I was upset for 5 minutes until I realized that makes perfect sense. Why would you want a 44-foot by 12-foot stage to overwhelm the beautiful Vickery House? You wouldn't. So then we had to give attention. Budget cutbacks, overwhelmed staff, and big projects at the center. We did not pay homage to the project the way we should have at the pace we would have liked to. But once we started getting our momentum, things are going on. Well, what the next slide shows is that what's happening now. What are the variables now? Exact same things. Funding, timing, logistics, and attention, plus the weather. So our funding now is that we will need more money to finish the signage, the lighting, the drive, and the pathways. We just got an anonymous donation of $500 yesterday for the cabin. So that was exciting. That money will go to paying a local blacksmith, Lynn Chapman, to create details. That is hard to compete with right there.
I'm sorry, but this thing just got knocked out by the hour.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I knew how expensive this can be. Well, I'm going to wrap this up quickly because I know you're probably ready to move on. So we needed we're working on the funding, but getting the cabin here, the rest of it will flow. Logistics, we have a great crew. Jace Oliver is a new project manager at the university. This is a very with it together young man. He is a project manager from the word go. He knows exactly what day things are going to be going on. And my mom, he's just a good guy. Wouldn't you say, Betty and Jim, that Jace is on top of it? And the Millards have a great design aesthetic. We are the adoptive parents now. We're waiting for those labor pains to come a little. Woohoo! I'm just so glad it didn't get blown out, but those things are so expensive. We're waiting now for the water to break and dilation to take, and when that happens, we're going to be waiting with diapers, and we're going to be ready to welcome it in, and we will be sending alerts of when it gets closer. Right now, we're looking at probably the week of the 25th, it's looking like. I like to envision the cabin as a giant old elephant that's being herded and handled gently as she goes to her new preserve, the back of the Vickery House. And we'll be there waiting the celebration. How's that for a mixed metaphor? Okay, so the center mission, as you might have read, is to educate the community and students on Southern Appalachian culture, art, history, music, and nature. The cabin will serve that role in the context of our mission, and it will also enrich it. On the screen, I'm going to put it here. One day I was thinking about what are the words that pop in my mind when I think of the cabin. And I've jotted these down, and these came to my head, and I'm not going to go through a great deal with these. But uniquity, I thought I made that word up. There really is the word uniquity. It means a thing of uniqueness. And I was thinking of an antique, a unique antique, and that's what this cabin is. It is so unique. And it's full of dignity because it's going to just flip our students out when they look at this small little building and realize families live there. Talk about a small footprint. Talk about the day of non-consumption as far as having stuff. These people had to be utilitarian. A new perspective. We had the Vickery House perspective. Now we're going to have this cabin. What an incredible comparison and contrast we'll be able to do with our students when they come with visitors. The Vickerys were wealthy in comparison to the rest of the community. They had a chef for their dogs. They had a silver service. They were... If you look at the ledgers of Vickery, which are available at the Library Technology Center online records, they were very wealthy. I'm guessing no chef for the dogs at the cabin. So there is a commitment we have, the university has, to the community. They've taken on the incredible, daunting task of keeping the Vickery House up. And if you don't think that's daunting, go look at the rat holes that have been dug through that we just found as they're pulling furniture through the floor. We have a commitment to the cabin, and now we're going to be able to connect to the community by just walking up the street from town. You'll connect to us, and we'll connect to you. And we're really excited about that. Preservation, we're going to need you a lot. I'm not a historian. Roseanne's not a historian. Carol's not a historian. But we like it, and we're excited about it. But we're going to need your expertise. We have no public history program at North Georgia. That's part of the reason why this is such a slow process. So we need to continue our work with preservation. All right, quickly. We're going to be a learning lab for our students. This is where we're going to create products. We're going to have dramatic readings, plays, all the things that you saw in that program. Okay, so the cabin is a reminder that the telling of the stories of lives lived has always been and always will be a very complex task. That's really important to us, to avoid stereotyping. The culture and histories of the women and men who settled and lived in this region, including the Cherokee, should be shared through the honest accounts of dignity. We don't want to romanticize. We don't want to stereotype. We don't want to simplify. They're not cartoon characters that live in this cabin. They're real people with very complex stories. So you're going to be so important to the telling of these stories and to the discourse that happens with those stories. So look for it soon. Thank y'all. Anybody have any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Yes, Jim.
Yes, Jim's right.
That just reminded me something. There's a lot of history we learned over the years when we moved the cabin to near where our home is now. We had the Thompsons come up and take a look at it because they heard that we moved the cabin. The Thompsons owned the property around late 1800s, 1900s. And we were they called first and said to come up and take a look at it. We said, fine. So we were on the porch of our street porch of our present house. And they came up in a van. And as the van stopped in front of the cabin, we heard screaming coming out of the van. And I ran down off the porch. I said, is everybody all right in the van? There's a woman sitting in the back with her hands over her ears. And I said, you okay? She says, my God, she says, I was born in the cabin. So she told us stories about...
She looked like she was in the late 80s.
Yeah, this is mid-70s. This is mid-70s. Wow. So there are great history stories about these. We need to pass these things on so that the students will learn from the history of the...
Yeah, she had her great-great-granddaughter with her. And the child said, oh, Granny, you know, nobody could live in a place like that.
Any other questions?
Well, also for the members here, that the cabin will be moved probably the next couple of weeks. I think as soon as the weather clears, we can get to it. But the cabin is stripped.
The kitchen is
nothing inside and really nothing outside. They're right waiting to take the roof off so they can move the cabin. So,
and Paul Looper is going to move the cabin. He moved the Sautee cabin, and his father moved the cabin from its site down by the lake up the hill. So that's very exciting to us.
Way in the back, you have a question.
Yes, George.
Yeah. How were you able to date the cabin to 1832?
from the Thompson, that woman came up in the van.
So you
In
did
the
that in
70s.
1890.
I think it was Ali Thompson was with her. And we asked him Betty and I asked him a lot of questions. And one of the questions was, what is the family history of the cabin? He says, from what they know, from their parents and grandparents, it was built around 1830, 32, something like that. And that's where we got it. And it goes back, maybe before that.
Goes back to, also you have to go back to land lot auctions from when the land was taken from the Cherokees, and land lot auctions were, what, 1830?
1830, yeah.
So it could have been, before that.
And we imagine that that'll be a big part of research that happens at the university. Students and professors will take that on to go and do the provenance of the cabin and look at that.
And we have all the papers on our land lot from when the land lot auctions were to the present. So we know all the transactions of the property from that land lot auction.
I can't tell you how excited J.B. Jones was. He's going to go back and look at history in his family.
That's great.
And see if he can come up with something, so you'll get that too, brother.
Well, if there aren't any other questions, I neglected to pass the baton to Roseanne Kent, who just was going to just say a few things about what's coming up at the center. Are we okay? I know y'all ready to take a break, but she'll brief.
Very quick. My daddy says the brain can absorb more than the butt can endure. So, last week was another historic occasion at the Vickery House out of many that I've been privileged to experience, and that is that we have our first class in the first minor in this state of Georgia, Appalachian Studies as an academic discipline. With 7,
I think we had 8 days. 8 cadets did not come back.
8, yeah. I think we told them they had to write and research, and it scared them a little bit. But we're so excited that, and the students are as well, that they are part of something bigger, and that they will be the ones that carry this history forward. And one young woman came up to me after class and said, she was a young woman from here, and she said how glad she was that they were having this minor here because she didn't have to go to North Carolina. Another young woman from Arizona said she knew she'd made the right place by coming here now instead of having to go to Benedict. So this is the kind of young and vital and talent and strength that we want to come to this town and stay in this town. By sweat equity of moving cabins and dressing it and interpreting it. This is an investment in their stories, And so we're looking forward to being a part of this big story all together. Carol is such a blessing for our center as well. And this was the day I knew it, y'all, when I was talking with a fellow storyteller who is not from here. And I said, I'm telling you, go collect people's stories of their mules. And she said, mules? She's Italian. And I said, yes, I promise you, mules. People, everybody has a mule story. And Carol got up and ran in, and she said, I used to race mules. On Gold Rush. So, it was endorsed at that moment. So Carol brings a lot of local color to our scene. And you'll have to ask her about the dance she did for the Chinese visitors another time. But we're excited about this semester. The students are excited. Having young people involved and to carry this forward is the reason that we're all here. So we look forward to you coming and being a part of that.
Thank you, Roseanne. appreciation for your coming and being our speaker tonight and telling us about the plans for the Smullian's Gold Rush Cabin. We'd like to present you with this copy of this book, James Postman.
Free for Jim.
Free Jim, written by our own Chris Ward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, Betty and Jim, would you please come up?